This is your place for all things Grand Rapids Griffins and all things Toledo Walleye. This is the Hockeytown West Podcast with your host, Brandon Cook and Nick Harrington.
Welcome to the Hockeytown West Podcast, your source for everything Grand Rapids Griffins and Toledo Walleye hockey. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon.
And I'm Nick.
And we are joined yet again by Mr. Tyler Kuehl of MLive, Daily Faceoff, College Hockey News. Am I missing anything there, Tyler?
Not this week. That could easily change, but you never know. You know, something might pop up, something might get taken away. We'll just have to wait and see, man. It's the off season. Crazy things happen.
Crazy things do happen. Before we jump into crazy things that have already happened, I'll go to Nick first. Nick, how you doing today, man?
Good. I got this is gonna be a crazy 2 weeks, and we're trying to figure out off-season content. Like, not try to figure it out, but try to plan the off-season recordings. And it's I'm on like a 9-day stretch coming up, so it's last day off until like Sunday, and then last day off till the following Saturday. So
You guys get days off?
barely.
Good for you.
Barely. So yeah, just enjoyed the day, grilled out, got some pork chops from Maria's mother, so I cooked those up and worked out the yard a little bit and prepping for this episode. So
Nice.
and our
Tyler, and the off season, yeah. And Tyler, how are you, man?
Good. You know, it's a bit of a lull right now. It was a busy week last week. The Memorial Cup finished up yesterday, and probably one of the greatest, maybe not the greatest final, I know that's probably up for debate, but certainly one of the best in recent memory, with the Saginaw Spirit becoming the first Michigan team and the first Michigan team, or American team from the Ontario Hockey League to win the Memorial Cup, becoming the 12th team in history, the host to win the Memorial Cup, beating the London Knights 4-3. Josh Bloom, a hell of a game, the Vancouver Canucks prospect, and guy that started the season with the Abbotsford Canucks in Kalamazoo Wings. So he did everything this year and everything last night. So that was a fun tournament. I was only there for a few days in Saginaw. And I can tell you guys what, I mean, we've all been to Saginaw before. We've been around Frankenmuth and all that area. I've been to Spirit games, you know, during the regular season before, and I've been around the city. I've never seen that town have so much of a buzz about anything before in my life. Like Frankenmuth, wonderful. Going to Midland, going to like Loons games and, you know, tournaments around there. That's always fun. Saginaw can be a real ghost town on any given night, but there was a certain kind of energy and it came into the games as well. So that was certainly fun to go see the Memorial Cup and get to see that and get to run to a few people, get to rub some shoulders with some cool folks. So that was a fun time for sure.
Was it not the greatest game because your team lost, or just not the greatest because of other games
Listen,
prior?
I'd like to say myself, I did a couple of really good pieces for Zane Parekh and Michael Misa of the Saginaw Spirit, two future NHL draft prospects. Parekh's probably going to be a top 5 pick in this year's draft, and Misa's probably on pace to be a top 10 pick next year's draft. So I'd like to think I was very unbiased, but yes, my London Knights lost after playing their worst game of the year. I like the Spirit. Yeah. If you look back and watch the game, they played the perfect game. They caught the Spirit, or they caught the Knights off guard. Knights hadn't played in 4 days, but I know Hunter didn't make, he bounced that excuse off to the side, but they played horribly. The London Knights, the highest scoring team in the Ontario Hockey League, was held to 1 shot on goal in 33 minutes. Or 31 minutes, I think it was. It was something ridiculous. But they came back. Easton Cowan played a great game. Sam Dickinson played a great game in the second half. And unfortunately, just a lucky bounce late. And Josh Bloom, man, a guy that was the Spirit captain last year, was traded to North Bay and had all that craziness. It was full circle for him. Braden Hache had probably the greatest post-game presser of all time on the ice, saying, "Oh, we saw all the fake articles out there, the fake experts saying that we're going to lose. We're going to go 0-3. Well, look at us now." Like, he did pretty much cut like a WWE promo saying, "You guys thought we were going to suck and now we're great." Did one of those things. So it was a very entertaining tournament and a fun thing to experience for sure.
I like how you mentioned the North Bay, because didn't Saginaw come from North Bay?
Yes,
they
the
were
North
moved
Bay
over.
Back in 2002, yeah. And then North Bay didn't have a team for a long time, and then Brampton moved to North Bay, so Brampton didn't have a team. They tried the pro ranks, and now Mississauga, the Steelheads, are moving to Brampton now. So it's just all sorts of which ways and nonsense. I mean, that's junior hockey, though. I mean, things change every 5 to 10 years. It's how it is.
Yeah, it was. I'm jealous that you were there. I'm definitely jealous of that. It looked like a great time. well done by the city of Saginaw putting that together and executing on it. I think a lot of people doubted that this would go well for them, and they
I'm one of
delivered
those
at a
guys,
high
I'll be honest
level.
with you. When I heard Saginaw, I'm like, oh, it's because of Michael Misa, because he was an exceptional status in the Ontario Hockey League. And he's a great player, great kid too, for a kid that's now just 17 years old, super well spoken. But I'm like, it's Saginaw, I'll admit, I came out of the place I was staying at, went to the gas station right around the corner, and I heard someone over speaking. Yeah, do you guys hear about the shooting that happened 2 blocks away? And I'm like, pardon? The way that town they really cleaned it up. It was super fun. The activities they had going around the city were great. And it seemed like, from all intents and purposes, talking to other teams, they enjoyed their time too. Moose Jaw and Drummondville, I was talking to the media from that came and traveled with the team. They were all like, yeah, this has been actually a very fun tournament. And, there's been a lot of great cities they've gone to in the past. I only went to Quebec City a number of years ago. And that's a great, beautiful downtown area. But they're like, for all intents and purposes, it was a great experience for them. And so they did a really good job. And the OHL it was a big gamble to come to Saginaw, because there was a lot of education that had to go on to kind of inform the public and the community, saying, all right, guys, here's how big this tournament is. And I think the fans and the city, they rallied around the team and ended up paying off with a historic victory.
Yeah, and I mean, it couldn't have worked out better for the OHL too, having an all OHL final. They just teed it up, and the cards fell right perfectly in place. So congrats to Saginaw, congrats to Spirit. Yeah, just an awesome time. Great things for hockey in Michigan right now. Love it.
And Chris Osgood was one of the owners for the Saginaw Spirit, so I mean, it helps for our community.
Yeah, him and I think Jimmy Devillano is a partner too. So when I almost ran into him at the Griffins game, I think it was game 4 against Milwaukee, I'm like, I almost wanted to ask him more about the Memorial Cup than I did about the Red Wings or Griffins. So, hey, Jimmy D, yeah, you're a longtime guy. Well, what about Saginaw?
I'm sure he would have loved to answer too. They seem to really love that team and love what they're building over there. So, yeah. Awesome stuff. Now we'll shift over into the Grand Rapids and Red Wings organization talk a little bit. This episode is going to be our season recap, our overall season recap. We're not going to break down position by position. That's later episodes for the summer, but we're just going to talk overall feel of the team and everything like that. But before we jump into that, there's already been some roster changes in the organization as we come into today. And the first one was a big one that impacted the Toledo side, and John Letherman has left and he's going to Finland. And that one kind of shocked a lot of people, but I think it makes kind of sense for him. Go get the money. I understand it completely, but it sucks because we all liked him. He's a great person and he's a fun talent to watch. But then on the other side, Jan Bednar, after his rights were kind of left out in the open by the Red Wings, they didn't sign him. Grand Rapids comes through in the last second and signs him to a 1-year deal. So as currently he is signed to the Griffins, and we'll see what that works out in the season when it starts. He probably will still end up in Toledo. There's a chance of that. But at the same time, he's going to have to come in and earn his spot still. But he is signed. And that's what me and Nick were both very, very concerned about.
Yeah, we had about a 20-minute discussion about it at dinner the other night of what does our goaltending situation. I felt like last year we were kind of in the open of like, what's going to happen? What are they going to bring? We didn't have a backup. We didn't have technically a starting goalie till like a week before the season when we signed Hutch. And then, we got just crazy holes to fill. And now it's kind of looking that way again for this coming season. So,
well, they do have Carter Gielander, who, from having actual conversation with the people around the team, there's kind of an expectation that he can compete for a job next year with the Griffins. Cause for all the perspectives that we've seen, it's going to be Kosa probably being the number 1 guy, but it's going to probably come down to Bednar or Gielander, and obviously the team is going to make that decision during training camp and kind of maybe have conversations with the guys during the off season and say, where are you at? And, what, because I think this is obviously, we're here on June the 3rd and we have many months before the season starts, the next season starts, but they're going to want to give Kosa the bulk of the minutes. So it's going to be similar to what you see in the NHL. Are you going to call up a player to sit on the bench, or are you going to keep him down a level and let him play? So it's going to be, who is a good enough goaltender to play in the American Hockey League, but also who is good enough that we think can be a starter in some capacity at some point. They're going to have to make that decision probably at this point between Bednar and Gielander, barring that they sign or bring anyone else in, of course.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think, I made my prediction to Travis and Nick earlier, and I was like, yeah, you could see a Kosa Bednar situation and a Gielander and veteran goalie in Toledo, or you could see a Bednar, Gielander in Toledo, and a veteran in Kosa here. It's going to be a very interesting thing to watch, but at least they're signed. That's what I was more concerned about. They are signed, so it's not going to be a scramble all offseason to find goaltending talent for either of the teams.
Yeah, and I've been seeing so much commotion about Trey Augustine coming in, and it's not coming here this year. He's committed to MSU for the fall. So if you are still on that trade, get off of that at the moment. So yeah, it's important to have our guys sign right now and then work it out throughout camp and off season and figure out who's going to be where. So glad we don't have to talk about that yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much about Augustine because I don't know why, for a guy of his stature, he can develop for another year, get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. And because obviously the Red Wings have their faith in Kosa right now. I think this year proved that. So why would you throw Augustine in the mix and all of a sudden have two goaltenders fight for the net when you can have one guy start as the number one guy in the American League and another guy start on one of the top teams in college hockey on the other side? So yeah, that wouldn't make too much sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense the way they're going about it, and I like it. I mean, of course, we want to see Trey as soon as possible, but at the same time, yeah, no, he needs to be at MSU for another season, for sure.
Yep.
But that's all the roster updates we got. I know there was another signing today, but I haven't looked too far into it yet, so I didn't want to dive too much into detail on that. We don't know where he's going to land, but the Red Wings did sign a guy from the Czech leagues, and that's about all I know. He looks like a depth piece, young kid.
But Jakub Rachelski to a 2-year deal. I mean, not a bad player from what I've been told. Sam Nessler at the Daily Faceoff wrote a little report on him. He's played at the World Juniors before. He's got that big time experience, but he seems like a guy that, if anything, if they do bring him over, which from him signing the contract, that seems like the path. I would presume he'd come down to the American League first. So, but like I said, obviously we got plenty of time to sort that all out.
Yeah, the one thing I did see was like a crazy stat of his this past season was like a plus 21 goals from his season before. So a breakout year for him before Detroit signs him, and we'll see what that translates to in either league, I guess. But with that, it's time to jump into the season recap here because I feel like this is gonna be a fun one for us. I think we have a lot of opinions on this, but we're gonna dive right in. And I just want to get you, Tyler, your overall thoughts for this season.
Failure. It's a failure of a season. No, it was not a failure of a season. Yeah,
right?
It's funny. I followed this team my entire life. I've covered this team now for 2 years, and I saw how bad things ended I guess we can still say last season, 22-23, and the transformation to this year, because early on we had very similar of a story developing from what we've seen in the past seasons. The team's not playing well. They're not scoring. The power play stinks. We'll keep on that here in just a minute. The goaltending's not all there, and we're losing, and we're at the bottom of the division. Near the bottom of the division again. I'm like, oh, well, here's another long year. We're just going to talk about the positives and try to focus on that and so on and so forth. But the way this team just kind of rallied together at the right time, the way they listened to Dan Watson and the coaching staff and, really played for one another and themselves, and it worked out. It was a very good hybrid thought process behind that, because you saw guys like Bergeron, like Mazur, even Zarnik when he was down here was playing well, and Simon Edvinsson as a showing that he's an NHL defenseman, showed that at the end of the regular season with the Red Wings. Albert Johansson making humongous strides at times, and obviously Kosa playing great. It seemed like everything that went wrong last year was kind of swept off to the side, like, all right, let's try this again, and almost a huge reset for the team. And you saw that in the confidence of the players. Making the playoffs is just kind of the icing on the cake in this whole story, because even if they missed the playoffs, if they played, obviously if they played that well, they would have made it anyways. But my point is the way the team felt coming out throughout the season, after every game, even after a loss, it was like, yeah, we lost, but we played well. There was improvements. I like things like this. It was rare after a game you'd hear Dan Watson condemn something. He wouldn't really speak negatively. He would try to find the positives in certain things. He's a straight shooter, but he would consistently say, I'm like, yeah, we did this wrong, but we did some of this right. And, you didn't get a whole lot of that in the last regime. So just the little things of just the confidence within the team, that's what led to the wins, what led to the long point streak, the historic now franchise record home point streak, and their first playoff series win since the last time they won the Calder Cup. It's actually a pretty good success for this team. And, we might not, there's going to probably be a handful of guys that won't be back next year. And I know we'll get into that, but it was a really, really fun season, at least to cover for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said there. It was, in my eyes, it was a massive success. I know winning the cup is the massive success, but it's everything I wanted to see after a terrible last season before. And seeing some of these guys break out, especially near the end of the season as well, seeing guys like Elmer finding his game suddenly and going, okay, there's still something here in this prospect. This is awesome. Here we go. And I mean, you can talk about that with so many guys in this team, but the vibe was so much better around the entire team.
Vibes
were so good, bro. But it felt like they're on the whole organization until Detroit was officially eliminated from the playoffs. Like the vibes were better when the Griffins were this much better. And yeah, it was just a fun season. What's your overall thoughts on the season, Nick?
So last year, our first year covering, we covered halfway through, is the most depressing season of my life of covering hockey, I felt. And so, at the end of the season, I said, I don't want to do this again. This is terrible. So we signed up back up after Waddy got extended or signed, and vibes were good. Yeah, we knew there was going to be a little bit of slow start. There was going to be a gel period because, looking at I went through the roster and there was we used 49 different players last year. This year we went down to 36, and out of those 49 from last year, 8 of those were goalies. So I'm like, huge roster change. A lot of goalies. Yeah, that's a bonus episode.
Yeah, can I name all the goalies? Pretty sure I could.
So like seeing the whole roster change over, a lot more prospects, a lot more youth being infused. Like it was huge to like. This was a great building year. Like, I feel that this should be the lowest we should ever be moving forward, like, if that makes sense. We had the offense, the stats we'll break down a little later, but everything was most of the things were a lot better. There were some things that did slide from year to year, but I think this was a good starting point, and I'm excited to see what Waddy does, especially you're still going to have roster turnover every year. Like, it is what it is. Some guys are going to leave. You're going to get people that get promoted up. You're going to lose people for injuries, trades, whatnot. But I felt like this was a good starting point, and I'm hoping that next year we're able to just build on to this now that they're familiar with the most of each other are going to be familiar. And then also like the system is in place, and Waddy's only going to get better coaching after his first year at the A. So a lot of optimism and a lot of hope to continue and regain faith in my in me, as a fan. Like I wanted to be at more games because they were playing better.
Yeah.
And they were actually showing up, caring.
Yeah.
We had some good old give a what.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, but I didn't go that far.
Of those 36 players, you got to remember, like Shai Buium was one of them. He played one game. Billy Husso was one. He played one game. John Lethman was one. He played one game. And Emmett Finney was one, and he played 3 games. Nate Danielson's on there. And Trenton Bliss only played 2 games with us. So, like, it wasn't like last year where these guys were here for a while, then all of a sudden gone or whatever. And yeah, it's just the stability was there. And God, it was appreciated.
And the guys were having more fun, too. Like, you didn't see that last year.
No one was having the fun they had.
Obviously, that winning helps, but it was a much more upbeat locker room.
Yeah,
like I said, even on a loss, like if there were a couple laughers, of course, and there's always that during the year, but the guys just shook it off. Like it was like, and I remember that was the craziest thing about the post game. I think it was after the Rockford loss. He said, "I typically don't talk to my team after games." I'm like, wait, really? Like sometimes coaches will say some things and maybe some guys will just let it go. But even when I was briefly in pro, coach would come up and say at least 1 or 2 things about the game. Like Dan Watson realized these guys are professionals. Like I don't need to talk to them after every game. I don't need to pester them. Hey, you know what? Tough game. See you tomorrow. Stuff like that. Like he let them be, he let them guys be dudes. Best way I can describe it.
He let them grow up and become professionals.
Yeah.
I didn't know you didn't talk to the team after. Lalone does the same thing.
You know what? I guess two great minds think alike, because I mean, Derek and Dan work together. I mean, I've heard some coaches don't necessarily talk to the team, but I assume at least a few times a year they will do that, depending on the game. And I mean, we see Rod Brindamore speeches every single game. They always seem to pop up on social media about him walking around, pointing at a guy like this. These guys over here doing great things, dropping an F-bomb in the middle of it. And then this guy over here, what a blankety blank guy. What a great guy. Like, you see that almost every game with Carolina. So I guess it just depends on the coach.
It's true, but it is an interesting tidbit there. But like you said, he let them go do their own thing and let the leadership show through. And I think that's what was even more like different this year, is like we had good leadership on the team in years past, obviously through the captains we've had, but the leadership wasn't just the guys wearing a letter on their jersey on this team. You could see it just up and down the lineup. Everyone was trying to be a leader. Like even when Simon Edmondson got more comfortable, directing people, having those nice conversations like we saw him having with Kosa a few times, where he'd screen them accidentally or whatever, and they'd have looks like a heated debate about it, but they were both grown-ups. They handled it themselves and figured it out and got on the same page. And that's how you build a team right there. That's how you build a group of guys that's going to go out there and fight for each other. So I do love that. Next question for you, Tyler, is what do you think the biggest improvement this season was from last season?
Holy bejeebus. The easy answer is the goaltending, but the reason why the goaltending was better, or at least looked better, was because of the defense. Holy bejeebus. Were there times last year when Alex Nedeljkovic or Victor Brattstrom, or even when he was around, UC Olkanora was in net, it was a dumpster fire in the Griffin zone sometimes. And a lot of that had to do with the youth. Simon Edmondson laying landmines and trying to get the puck out of the zone, and Albert Johansson at times looking timid and kind of scared within his own zone. That all kind of changed. And I think it has to do with a couple of things. One, bringing in a guy like Dan Watson, having Brian Lashoff on the staff as well, guys that have been there, guys that have done that, guys that have been around the been around the organization for a long time. They know what the guys are thinking, and they know kind of the pressures of being in the Red Wings organization, and they know the position well. And that's why we saw improvements from guys like Johansson, Edvinsson. You bring in a guy like Josiah Didier, and I know he wasn't perfect every game, but he has the experience as a big time playoff guy. Brogan Rafferty brought in a lot of experience, and there was just this more comfortable play in their own zone, sometimes too comfortable, but at times you could tell they weren't allowing the same amount of great scoring chances in games. And that's where I think this team really improved now, was just limiting those chances, really doing a good job of not allowing the other team to get the offense going. When they were trying to rush the puck up, they were getting sticks in lanes, forcing guys wide, and just doing the little things right to not get outplayed. Because there weren't too many games this year that the Griffins were heavily outshot. If they were outshot, it may have been only by a few. I mean, as great as Kosa was, it was hard to be like, man, he had a great night tonight, made 26 saves. Alex Nedeljkovic, I felt like half the time I was just touting him like, you know what? He gave up 6 tonight, boys, but 35 saves for Nedeljkovic. He was really a workhorse. That just kind of shows the difference between this year's team and last year's. It's just because they had a much bigger focus on their own zone. I think that was kind of the reason why they kept Dan and they wanted to bring in Dan, is because, like, you know what, Dan, we see what you do in Toledo and the ECHL, where that game can just be wide open nonsense hockey at times, and say, hey, can you teach these kids how to play defense and, be stable on the blue line? And he helped do that. Him and Lashoff both really did a good job of keeping that core together and finding the right guys to work with each other. And it really paid off.
Yeah, I would agree with that big time. Nick, what do you think?
There's so many things to say here. Like, I mean, the biggest improvement was the wins, right? I mean,
went from the least amount of wins in a season in franchise history to a playoff team. Yeah, you got a point there, Nick.
I mean, it was a 22-point increase, 9 more wins than last season. I think it really boils down to coaching. I mean, the style of play that they played was so much better than what you saw last year. I mean, if it's defense or forwards, I mean, you're gonna drive me over the coals for this, but it's a point to be made, though, is that last year we only had 3 players in a plus situation. All right.
07, 08? Gosh almighty, that sounds...
Alex Chason was one with a +6, with then Lucas Craggs and Philip Zadina were your other two with the +1s. Okay.
And they played like 4 games combined.
Correct. Yeah. So like you could rail me for looking at plus minus, but at the same point, it has to be made. Like this year, we had 18 players that were positive. Nolan Stevens, Marco Casper led the team in a +9. All right. And then you had Spezia Shine at +8, and then Albert Johansson at +7. We and Trenton Bliss had 2 games, and he was a plus as well. So I mean, there was a huge change there. Like that style of play was better. The roster management was better. The goaltending was better. I mean, overall, everything was better. I don't know if there's a single thing that was better because it was just like a whole different team, a whole different coach, a whole different style. Everything overall was better except for one thing, which was the power play, which we'll get to later.
Yeah. And
that's
normally,
crazy,
I'd pick
right?
on you for the stat. Yes, I normally would pick on you because plus minus is plus minus. But at the same time, that you got to call it plus minus when there's an outlier. And that's a freaking outlier of all outliers. Like that was it. We talked about it all last season because there wasn't much else to talk about. So we were always talking about that stat. And yeah, that's just insane, the change in that.
To go from 3 to 18, like that's, and it wasn't just minimal. I mean, they were big changes there. So that's just crazy to look at. It's just crazy. And it's just like, it's forwards, it's defense, it's goals. Like we even let in less goals this year than we did last year, which was like 52 goals less this year. I mean, that goes to Tyler's point of goaltending. Like Ned stood on his head last year, but Costa's stats were pretty close in line with what Ned did last year.
Yeah. Overall,
say, right?
You know, it is what it is, right? But again, I think it goes back to Tyler's point too, just the defense. The defense was just so much better. Everything felt so much calmer. It wasn't pure chaos where you're watching them try to get out of the zone unless they're on the power play. Like it wasn't just pure chaos watching them try to break out of the zone the entire game. On the power play, we struggled to break into the opponent's zone this season, but we couldn't even get out of our zone half the time last year. And you're sitting there scratching your head going, what the hell is going on? Well, this year, everything was much more stable and just everyone was on the same page and the talent level was so much higher and the compete level was significantly higher. Got to bring back the compete level there. So
got to bring back the giving. You know what? Sorry, you guys. I didn't mean I was listening to you guys, but I had to go back because you're talking about plus minus, Nick, and you got me thinking of maybe the greatest Green Jacket season in Griffins history. Go back to the 07-08 year. People remember that because that was the time Dan McCarty made his comeback with the Griffins and the Red Wings. Jakob Kindl led the Masters for the Griffins, finishing the year playing 75 of a possible 80 games. Was a -34. The worst Griffin last year, the worst Griffins were Giovanni Smith and Danny O'Regan with a -21. Yeah. Kindl beat that by 13 goals against.
I wish that was my score on the course, man. Jesus.
-34, man. That was a fun year because that was when you could sit anywhere you wanted. Even on Friday night, that was when they started doing dollar beers because, like, wow, we have no one here on Friday nights when we're a dog crap team because they were bad for a couple of years after that too. So that was the invention of the dollar beers because, like, we need people to show up. So what they do? So like here,
Nick thinks last year was dark, buddy. There was darker days.
The years leading up to that Calder Cup in 2013, they were bad.
Moving on from that topic, though, what, Tyler, do you think was missing this season from this team?
I want to state the obvious, or I'm trying to find something different.
I mean, whatever your heart desires.
Just, I don't know, with a team that has top end prospects like Carter Mazer, like Simon Edvinsson, like Jonathan Bergeron, like established guys that can score in both the ANHL and the AHL, like Austin Zarnik, and you have Tara Hirose. How in the bejeebus do you have a power play that is so bad that they score just 4 power play goals in a playoff? 2 of them came in one game off a double minor. 1 was an empty net goal. I know it sounds critical, and even Dan's even brought it up himself. We haven't even needed to ask him at times. He's like, yeah, I know our power play is bad. It's not good. We got to figure something out. I don't know what needs to change there, but because that's Stefan Julian's job on this team is to run the power play. But there needs to be some intrusion, some other support to figure that out. Because with a great team with offensive capabilities, it's like, oh, Berggren's such a great offensive weapon and this and that. But all of a sudden, you take one guy off the ice from the other team, and the team just has this massive brain fart and forgets how to pass the puck and play hockey. I don't understand that. That's the part that's been missing for me for this team. And truth be told, I don't think just because once as the playoffs went along, the power plays became less and less. I don't say that the power plays failures cost the Griffins against Milwaukee. I don't think that in the slightest, and I don't think it would have helped them any more in the Rockford series had they scored power play goals. If anything, they would have had a longer layoff, which I don't think they would have helped them at all. But during the regular season, that's the difference between, playing Rockford or playing Texas in the first round of the playoffs, is if their power play is decent, they might have jumped up and at least closed the gap with first place of the Admirals, and they're fighting for a division title. So if there's one thing I would like to see is a better structure and maybe more, I don't want to say buy-in, but just a better executing power play next year. Even if we're going to lose a couple of the guys, I mean, we're suspecting Berggren, we're suspecting Edmondson, guys like that aren't going to be back. Insert a couple guys that can score on the power play and get the guys to do the thing to put the puck in the net. I don't need to draw it up for anyone because unfortunately they've drawn it up enough in the Griffins room and they still can't convert. So that's one thing I believe was missing for this hockey team.
Nick?
My thing was power play as well. We actually were worse this year on the power play than we were last year, which is crazy to think. With that,
we didn't have Berggren half of last year either.
Yeah,
it's true.
It was set. We finished at 17.8% last year on the power play, and we finished this year 17.2%. So not a huge decrease. Like penalty kill last year was 76%. We finished at 80%. So, I mean, penalty kill was a lot better, which you kind of assumed it would be based off of Lashoff coming in and their better defensive prospects. But on the power play, like we just didn't have. Like you could only do so much with Jonathan Berggren, right? He could only score so many goals. Teams are going to lock in on him. We needed to have that second threat. Really, is where I was kind of looking for like Carter Mazur to be that second guy on that power play unit to be able to bury the puck, or snipe a goal in, or shoot, get a greasy goal here or there. And like I just didn't see there wasn't anybody there on the second line or the first line where they were able to do that. Bergie was like our true goal scorer this year, but we just needed more offense, I felt. And I think that could probably have led to more on the power play and a little bit more wins here or there.
Yeah, I think all three of us are going to say the same thing here. Power play. It sucked. It was terrible. We needed a good power play. And I don't know what the answer is to fix it. Hopefully somebody smarter than me in the organization does know the answer and they do address it in the offseason.
The easy answer is shoot the puck. There were
obviously.
There were more times that they were trying to be so darn cute, trying that cross seam pass. No, just Berggren. He hate my shot's not as good, dude. He scored as many goals from the left side of that faceoff circle than anyone else, I think, on their strong side this season. And he'd get the room, he'd shoot the puck. You don't need a cross feed one timer, high tip, whatever. Just put the puck on net, and good things will happen.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a bunch during the season, saying we needed the guys down low, getting those greasy goals. Like we saw midway through last season, we saw Joel Esperant start parking himself in front of the net and converting on the power play left and right. It's like he had learned it when Alex Chason was here. They both were really, really good at doing that, and it helped the power play a ton. And, just looking at it this season, Joel Esperant had 6 power play goals, and last season he had 14.
Put him in the high bumper spot. That'll work. I mean, it worked again in the game against Milwaukee. That was his goal. He was in the high bumper spot. But no, he's a guy he's a Holmstrom. He can shoot the puck, but in tight, he's dangerous.
Yeah,
he had a big downside season this year too. I mean, he had 25 goals last year. Now he's down to 6. He finished this year with 16. So I mean, a lot of that came from the power play.
He was hurt.
He was hurt for quite a bit. He missed quite a year. He played the full 72 games last year, and he only played 59 this season. So. I mean, he had 49 points last season, 28 this season, but missed a good chunk of games. So I won't say that much about it, but definitely just utilizing the guys that are meant to be utilized in the right places in the power play. And like Tyler said, stop being so cute with it. Just shoot the puck. Like, just get it on net. Something will happen. And look how many times we saw Berge just close his eyes and rip it, and look what happened. Like, it's pretty simple. So I don't know. It's not like I'm over here on the completely fire Steph Julian train if that's the only thing he's running, but my God, if that's the only thing he was contributing to, that's scary.
Not good. Not good.
No, not good. But with that, let's head over to the ad break here. This is back to doing these again. Yep, back to the DraftKings ads. First episode back with them. So we'll send it over to DraftKings. When we come back, we'll have our favorite moment of the season and talk some season MVPs. So, Nick, for the first time in a while, go read the ad.
We're this close to crowning the Stanley Cup champion, and with the action heating up on the ice, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New to DraftKings? Listen up. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. Just deposit at least $5 and you'll get a bonus bet back equal to your first bet if it doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Will Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. cdkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
Great job, Nick. Wonderful effort there.
I like it.
Hard. I haven't done that in a while, so it took me a couple tries this time.
It's good to be back to normal with the network again. I love it. All right. One of the last things we'll talk about here to wrap up this season. Tyler, what was your favorite moment from this season?
Oh, man. I think the game, I would love to say the game against Milwaukee, the history game, as I've been calling it, because I can't think of a better name for it this time, when the Griffins came in on that 14-game point streak and Milwaukee had won 19 straight games. First time in the league's history that two teams that have had points in 14 straight games have met in a regular season game. There was so much, and even, let's remember, this was on a Sunday.
Yeah.
The game was on a Sunday, and there was an energy inside the arena too. And I think I'm always kind of critical. I was very critical early on in the playoffs too about the attendance for some of the Griffins games. But even the regular season, I'm like, it's a Sunday game. You might get 6,000, 7,000. Even though I think it may have hit 8, but it was just like a very loud crowd because I think people understood what was on the line here. And Kosa picking up the win there was huge. But, at the same token, I think I have to go with Game 3 against Rockford. Because with the point of me, making I don't want to call it a razz, but sometimes the crowd in Grand Rapids, it's a minor league hockey game, sometimes, and that's, going back to my talk about Saginaw, that was definitely the similar story was, you had fans that were going to be entertained by a sporting event rather than, the diehard fans. I think that was, sometimes you maybe see a couple thousand Griffins fans that kind of understand what's going on while the rest of them are just there to have a good time and watch a sporting event. That game was the first time, honestly, since this team won the Calder Cup, that I heard emotion in the arena like that. Like the crowd was into it. They knew what was going on. They were booing the heck out of the refs, booing the heck out of the Ice Hogs, giving it to Drew Comesso 6 ways to Sunday. And then the overtime goal, Mazur almost banging it in, and then Berggren scoring. The roar of that crowd, I have not heard that roar in over half a decade, guys. It was, even up top in the press box, you could feel the crowd. And that's something I don't really say much about going to minor league sports in general. That's something you only ever feel when you go to NHL games or NFL games or Major League Baseball games. That's why it was so cool about that game for me, just because you felt like the game meant something. Because for the last number of years, we keep joking about it, but it's true. any night with the Griffins, yeah, it's a good game. You might see something cool, but it didn't mean anything. They're out of a playoff spot. They're in last place. All these factors going into it. That was a really special moment. And I was glad I could be there for it and get to talk to the guys about it after the game. Like they felt it. They knew how important the game was because they could feel the fans be really into it like that, like they've never seen before.
Yeah, that was a beautiful one. Nick, what about you?
No, you go first.
Well, I'm going first?
Yeah, you're going second. Tyler went first. I want to hear yours because I have 3 and Tyler used 1. So I'm gonna see if you use the other one, and then I've got that one.
Oh,
and I came up with another as Tyler was talking too. So, but yeah, that game 3 kind of did bring me back because we had the pig roast. The city was there. The city was ready, and like you had a lot more people out. There was in that Milwaukee game. I mean, there was 9,000 people there. So I mean, that was. Everybody was on the edge of the seats, and Grand Rapids came out to play and like scored 4 right in a row. So I mean, it was like, so yeah, both of those are good moments. Those are good, Tyler. So I want to hear Brandon's.
So an honorable mention goes to Simon Edvinsson punching Angus Cruikshank in the face. That was probably one of my favorite games to be at in person, just because
which game?
The Toasters game, the Flying Toasters game. Because 1, the promo was just incredible. 2, the action on the ice that night was incredible. Simon doing that and then seeing him, that was where I felt like Simon was finally unleashed. And that's where we saw NHL level Simon, and he went off to obviously prove that he could do that. I think that was the game where he became who we knew he would be. I mean, you got Bergie in the locker room after the game chanting Rocky. Like that game just felt special for so many reasons. But I think my favorite moment of the season for me was Kosa's point streak. I think that one right there was big for me because I've been a big fan of that kid the whole time since he's been drafted by this team. And there was so many people online that thought he's a bust, he's terrible, he's never going to make it. And then this kid steps into his first year in the AHL, shaky start, figures it out after Christmas, and just goes on an absolute tear. And you just watch that prospect truly develop into a number 1 goalie right in front of your eyes every game. And I think just thinking for the future of the whole organization, that right there was super, super cool to watch. And it's something we haven't been able to watch in a really long time. Got to think back to what Jimmy Howard in Grand Rapids, Tyler, would probably be the best comparison, watching a goalie develop in front of you.
Yeah, because unfortunately the Griffins have done such a good job of not taking advantage of talented prospects, goaltending prospects. I mean, geez, Thomas McCollum, Philip Larson, Jordan Pierce, so many guys that came through the system and floundered and failed. And yeah, I mean, the record that Kosa broke was one set. We were kind of talking off air about it by Mark Lamott during the 02-03 season, that incredible year when there were, I kid you not, we were talking about Jakob Kindl being a minus 34. 4 players that played for the Griffins that year were a minus. That's how good that team was. And that's how good Mark Lamott was. Him and Joey McDonald, I think, I still think that's the best tandem this franchise has ever had. Maybe outside of Mike Fountain and Yanni Herme, but that's a different topic for a different day. But that's how long it's been since we've had a consistently good goaltender. And Kosa was that this year and then some.
Yeah. So I'm just going to really stick on that Kosa one there. That was my favorite moment of the season. I mean, you could go on for a whole episode about moments this year that I just enjoyed being a part of. Like, the game Tyler mentioned, the last game at home against Milwaukee, where I said that the team, sent us off with the best possible way. But that watching Kosa develop was my favorite moment of the season. So Nick, I'll pass it to you. What was yours?
Oh man, you guys all had really good ones. So if you look back at the start of the season, we could say the puck incident, because we referenced that multiple times.
That was not a fun moment.
That's why I wasn't putting it up there. That was my child's first ever hockey game, and thankfully he was asleep for that third period. So a buddy from out of town had never been to a minor league hockey game before in my life, and he's like, "What the hell is happening?" And I'm like, "Drunk people with squishy pucks."
Yeah, good thing he was asleep. You would have learned a lot of new words that day.
Oh my gosh. Even I was in the crowd that game, and I was just like, there was some things were said, and I almost fought a guy, but I'm like, I have a child. I can't do that.
So all right, back on track. So what was an actual favorite moment there?
So the turning point in the season.
Yeah, the turning point of the season. So I'd like, think of things like that. You think of, there was, I had also the 19-point game streak. Like that was a huge moment. I mean, that was crazy. I had flying toasters because that game, like we were up 3, then we were down 4-3, and then we came back and win it 6-4. I believe it was the score. Yeah, 6-4. And that was kind of like the turning point where the guys, I felt, really gelled and everybody came together. And like, I mean, since that time, like we went on that crazy streak. You got Kosa's crazy point streak as well. But like my favorite moment of the season was literally the last home game. Like just the way we came back, we scored 4 in 4 minutes. We thought Bergie had a hat trick. There were octopus on the ice. Like the crowd was just crazy. It was electric. It was so much fun. So I have to say that was my favorite game of the season, was that game. And I'm trying to think, there was another, I had something else too, but I forgot it as we were talking. I couldn't find my pen to write it down while we were talking either. But yeah, the Bergie, where we thought Bergie had the hat trick, that was my favorite game of the season.
So hard to pick. There's so many good ones from a season compared to the years past where it wasn't good ones. Like it's nice to have a laundry list of moments that were just special. And the whole season, I mean, for you and me, Nick, especially with the podcast, the whole season was special. This whole season's been an incredible one. So it's pretty hard not to, mention that aspect for us.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I can't believe the what we where we're at now.
I can't believe anything that we've done at all. But yeah, all good moments, guys. All good feel-good moments there. So the last 3 things I've got for you here. Go to Tyler first, because Nick wants me to do it that way.
Yeah.
Who was your offensive MVP for the Grand Rapids Griffins this season, Tyler?
Josiah Didier.
Oh my God.
The best soft 40-mile-an-hour wrist shot from the right point in front of the Griffins bench in league history. The best ever. No, I love Didier to death. Him and I got to talk a lot when we did the Sled Wings game back early in the year, and that he's just such a good guy. Always good to get a laugh out of him too. But yeah, it's Bergie. There was just, even through the call ups and the send downs, and obviously being ticked off with that, and deservedly so. It's not easy for a player who thinks they should be playing top minutes in the National Hockey League, at least being consistently playing in the National Hockey League, to not, and then all of a sudden come back down, and after kind of being left, felt like empty-handed. That's what you could tell by his reactions when you interviewed him, when you talked to him. He just was not happy with that situation. But even then, it ticked him off to the point where he's like, well, I got to play better then if I want to be there. And when that clicked in his head, when he realized that he had to turn his game up a notch to prove to everyone up in Detroit that he could play, that's when we saw his best. And that's when we saw it late in the year during that point stretch, that point streak in the playoffs. Oh my God, he was the team's, he would have been the reason why this team would have gone to the conference final, just because of how good he was. The team was great as a whole too, but he just brought something out of him because he wants to play in the NHL next year. And when I interviewed him during the locker cleanout, I told him and Simon Edmondson, I'm like, you know what, guys, I say this the most endearing way possible. I hope I don't see you next year, because both those guys worked their tails off to get to that point, and Bergie did so. And I wish him the best, because this year proved that he's ready for the next level, if there was any doubt about that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. Nick, do you want me to do mine first, or you want to do yours first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
I got you. We have the same one.
Nick's trying to do a cleanup here.
I think mine will shock you, actually. I mean, Bergie. I mean, I'm going to try not to mention the same one that's already been mentioned, because Bergie is the obvious, right? He had an incredible season. But a guy I think who was underappreciated all season and still put up fantastic numbers offensively, Dom Shine. This was a fantastic year for Shiner. And when you come into the season, you look at him and everyone's like, he's going to be named captain and all this, and that doesn't happen. Yeah. And it shocks a lot of fans. And you wonder like what that does mentally to the player. He didn't give a rip. He went out there, he played his game up and down the ice every night, finished 5th in scoring on this team, which blew my mind every time I looked at that stat. Every time we look at, there was a point in the season he was 2nd in scoring, and you're like, what? And yeah, I just think he had an incredible season. I'm so glad we have him back for another year next year. And I just, again, most underappreciated part of this entire team for what he brings to the table. So Dom Shine gets my offensive MVP of the season.
That's a good pick. I like that. I'm going to throw somebody. So I wrote two people. One was Bergie. He was a fan favorite of mine before.
Obvious.
But the other guy that I want to give flowers to for the second half of the season, I mean, it was Marco Kasper. I mean, the team really went the way he went as well. And when Bergie got called up a couple of times, like Kasper slid in and he did his thing. For just his first year over here in the AHL, I mean, he finished second on the rookies in goals, tied for first for assist with Amadeus Lombardi, which that is going to shock a few people. And he was a +9. I mean, Kasper did all the dirty stuff. Like even in that Toasters game, like he held that puck close to the boards. He kept it in the zone, killed time off. I mean, he does all the intangibles. I could see him possibly. I really hope he's back next season with us, but I could see him also graduating. But I think another year in the A would probably do him best. But I think he really embodied the team and like the gritty sandpaper, some of the antics after the whistle too, but not getting caught or any penalties on that side. So since I can't say Bergie, I'm going to go with Marco.
I mean, honorable mention, guys. So kind of burying the lead here. Carter Mazur was another guy that had that same kind of game, the grit game. And this is a guy that missed 12 games this year, was out for the first month or so with an injury, came back, struggled. His first goal was an empty net goal. And you know what he did? He came out, had a great year. And I wonder if, would he have been a 40-point guy had he not missed so much time and had such a slow start? So got to give some props to Carter Mazur too.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that completely. I think he had a fantastic season. I mean, I said it to Brian from Locked On. We both said it when we met up after the game, the last home game of the season. We both said that Carter Mazur is probably a Red Wing next year. I mean, he's done everything right this year. I know some people don't see it, and it's a difficult thing to see if you're not watching everything he does on the ice. But at the same time, it's also difficult when if you don't look at everything Marco Kasper does. You go, what are you talking about? He might be ready to graduate, and they're both just. If we somehow land both of them in Grand Rapids next year, holy smokes, it's so great for the team. It's great for these young guys that are going to be on the team next year too. And we're talking like, Nate Danielson, Emmett Finney, and all those guys. So Carter had an incredible season. It's another guy. If he's not in Detroit next season to start, he'll be there probably midway through. I think I fully could see that happening. So heck of a season from him too. Now, on the other side of the puck here, defensively, Tyler, who is your defensive MVP for this season?
Josiah Didier.
Josiah Didier. You know what? Listen, there was something about Didier's game that I just love. Like as a goaltender, I enjoy seeing guys just do stupid things to their body to make a play. Didier, there were some nights that Didier would make as many saves in a sequence as Kosa would, right? He would just do the little things. And I loved his game. You make him pick someone different, obviously, because I can't just pick him. I'm going to go with someone that really
pick him.
You can.
I know I want to, but I'm going to go with a guy that just maybe not wasn't the best defenseman this season for the team, but a guy that improved so darn much. Albert Johansson. Holy smokes. Just eons from his rookie year. I mentioned off the top, looked scared at times during his rookie year. Looked like he was out of sorts. And when you talk to him, he even admitted, getting used to North American ice was important. Getting used to the speed of the game, the physicality of the American League game was important. So much so that his play improved. When I was talking to Dan Watson, I had to make sure I listened back to it, make sure I wasn't hearing things wrong. And I asked him, I followed up about it. I asked him, who do you think is not going to be here next year in terms of getting called up to Detroit? He mentioned, of course, Simon, Bergie, and Albert Johansson. And I was like, really? And I asked him, what makes his game translate? And he says, and he mentioned, obviously he's got the offensive touch, but the strides he made defensively this year, improving his game, his gap control, being physical when he needed to be, being in the right place, not being timid with the puck, around the puck. There was just he just listed off so many things that he did right that just kind of opened my eyes. Like, you know what? Maybe he is closer than we think. Because when I think I came on early in the year, I said, Albert's been playing well, but I think he needs another year. But to hear from the head coach, the guy that's with him every day and who's coached him every day and worked with him every single day, to say that, you know what, if things open up for him, he could be a guy that plays. Now, that might be a 6'7" defenseman, but at the same token, that's a huge boost of confidence for him to say, like, you know what, he may just be my coach. He may just be being a nice guy. But at the same time, yeah, I have improved. I have gotten better. I'm looking at this from Al's perspective, but I think there's something there in him that we've been kind of undermining. And so we'll see what Yzerman thinks about him, what Horkoff thinks about him. But yeah, Albert Johansson's my MVP just because of how much he's gotten better. So much so to the point that he is right there on the cusp of being a Detroit Red Wing.
Yeah. I mean, that was my pick too, honestly. I've been big on Albert all season.
Well, you let me lead off.
That's,
Don't laugh, Nick. You're letting me lead off. I'm going to pick. I'm sorry.
That's
Next
totally
time, you know what? Fine. We're going to do goalie MVP. I'll pick Josiah Didier just so you guys can have a conversation about Sebastian Cossa.
Well, he was a good goalie. He did block a lot of saves.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Albert had a fantastic year. The obvious pick is also Simon Edvinsson. I mean, come on, the strides he took in his game this year. I mean, if I'm picking a true MVP, it's going to be Simon Edvinsson. I think even in just the 54 games that he played, the difference maker he was in the lineup when there's games that he was out, especially in the playoffs. I mean, I think the Griffins win that round against Milwaukee if he doesn't miss those 3 games. And that's unfortunate to say, there's not one guy that makes a team. I think, questionable lineup changes in the first game back in Grand Rapids also didn't help the situation either. But Edvinsson this year, the strides he took from last season, he got his taste of the NHL at the end of last season and ends up down here. And I think that shocked a lot of people. And then he didn't get the first defensive call up. I mean, how many times was Brogan Rafferty called up and set back down over the season? I mean, he deserves an MVP nod just for the miles he put in. But Simon this year, the strides he took are just unbelievable. He's going to be such a rock solid defenseman in Detroit for such a long time. And I'm just so excited to see what he does. And like you said, Tyler, I hope I don't see him back here in a Griffins uniform. I feel like he's played his last game in a Griffins uniform. And if it's that last home game, what a game he played, because he had a fantastic game in that one, even with nursing an injury, even with missing the last 6 minutes of the game. Like he just did so many things right this year. And one of our biggest gripes about him last year was being undisciplined, and he was still undisciplined, but in the right way this year where he didn't take the call. Like there was such a change in the mentality he brought to the after the whistle fun. But when he had to step up and be the guy, he was the guy. He threw some bodies to the ground this season, and God, it was beautiful to watch. So I'll miss that maniacal laughter and smile that he has when he's out in the ice tormenting these guys, but he's going to be an absolute menace in the NHL as he grows into that league. So Simon Edvinsson will get my MVP award for defense this year.
It's funny, Cookie. I'll follow you up on that. I'm talking during the playoffs. We had a lot of Red Wings reporters, Max Boltman, Art Regner, Kevin Allen was there too from Detroit Hockey Now. And the conversation, every time they saw Edvinsson on the ice, it just seemed like, if we just had him for one more game, I think we would have had one more point and we would have made the playoffs. That's how much they think of Simon Edvinsson. And we got to see him just about, more often than they did. That's how highly people in Detroit think of Simon Edvinsson. He's that much of a difference maker. So just wanted to throw that in there as well.
It's a good piece. I appreciate that. All right, Nick, you're up.
I wrote 3 people down because I didn't know who was going to be.
Did you write them down? You didn't lose your pen?
Well, I typed them, so I had them for reference later, so I could read it later too. The first guy I had on here was Simon Edvinsson. Reason B is there were times in the games that he would say, I feel like Watson just whispered to him and said, "Take over," and he would just take that puck from beginning to end and try to score. He would try to put the team behind his back and try to get that goal. If it was a game tying or game winning, like you saw it multiple times, probably right around the beginning of the year of January. So I had him down. I had Albert Johansson. I mean, made huge strides. He even stepped up when Simon was out. So I mean, I had him down as well. And then all for the same reasons that you guys have already stated. So I'm not going to bore the listeners with repeating that. The third one I had was Josiah Didier. I mean, this guy, like, he literally, this is why I laughed at you, Tyler, is because I had him down because of all of the stuff that doesn't show up on the AHL stat sheets, right? The block shots, the saves, the hits, like all of that, like his leadership, that stuff just brought out. And I think he made the rest of the team better. I think he made the defensive corps better than what they were. And I'm really hoping, I don't know his contract situation. I'm hoping he's back next year. From a guy that started on the team that we signed, and we didn't really know much about him. We didn't even know how to pronounce his name right. We still sometimes struggle with that too. Or at least I do. I do. To becoming one, he's been one of my fan favorites, to be honest. Like, I enjoy watching him. He does make a difference in the playoffs too. Like, he was clearing the crease for Coase. He was clearing the crease for Hutch during the regular season. I mean, I think if we're not going to look at Simon or Albert, I want to put him up there as an honorable mention of Josiah Didier. So that was my third pick. So.
No, that's perfect because, like you said, the things that he did that aren't on the stat sheet are what makes him such a special player for this team. And there was a reason he was named captain, and everyone scratched their head at first, and we saw it. Like, we got it right away. It clearly on and off the ice, he is a true leader on this team, and he went out there, and even for being the age he is, throwing the body the way he was, blocking the shots the way that man has to be feeling it. He's limping around right now this offseason somewhere, hopefully on vacation in the sun, enjoying it. But yeah. And you know what? I'll also just give the honorable mention. He only played 9 regular season games for us, but Radim Šimić came into this team on the defensive side of the puck, and he played just fantastic. I don't think we'll see him back, unfortunately. We don't know what that will look like, but he's a guy that I would welcome back onto this team 100% for a full season next season. He slotted in when Edvinsson was gone in Detroit, and we didn't feel like we skipped a beat on that end. Like, obviously you missed some of the snarl that Edvinsson has, but for the defensive soundness, Šimić was a perfect replacement for that short time frame there. So I think he played a bigger role in getting us into where we were in the playoffs than we all think he was.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Then Tyler, to you, I'm sure it might be someone we already mentioned at some point in this, is the overall season MVP for the Grand Rapids Griffins this year from you. Who is it?
Josiah Didier. Man, it's so hard for me not to pick Sebastian Cossa, just because I love Michael Hutchinson to death. He is the nicest guy and is way too nice to be a pro hockey player. But I don't know if the Griffins go on that long run without Sebastian Cossa. I don't know if the Griffins make the playoffs without Sebastian Cossa. I don't believe the Griffins win a round without Sebastian Cossa. There was just something about the confidence the team had in front of him as the second half continued to go along. They realized, you know what? We can give up a 2-on-1 rush here. We can give up an odd man rush once or twice here in this period. We don't need to protect him. He can make the big save. He can make the breakaway stop. And when you have that confidence in a goaltender, you almost have an unbeatable mindset. Defensemen can push up in the rush a little bit more. Guys can get a little caught down low because they know that they have a guy back there that can make a big save. And when you take a guy out of a lineup like that and the team doesn't do well, and unfortunately it was hard for Hutch because he only played 2 games in the last month and a half of the season. So when he came in, everyone's like, oh, here's Hutch. We'll see how this goes. It's a tough spot for a goaltender for a team to not have a number one guy on every given night and a guy they can trust. And that's what they had in Cossa. And that's MVP material, and, I know that you want to look at a guy that can convert like Berggren or a guy that can lead a team like Edvinsson. And obviously Mazer playing well. Like, those guys all they were very valuable pieces to this team. But if you take Cossa out of the equation, I don't think we're having such an enlightening conversation here to wrap the season up.
Yep, I agree. And that's why Sebastian Cossa was my overall MVP as well. He was fabulous this season. A kid that I've already said it once during this episode, he was doubted by many. The comparisons to his peers and Wallstedt and everyone else who had a year on him in the AHL already after he spent a year in the East Coast League. Like, no one thought he was going to do what he did this season. And again, it started shaky for sure, but the team started shaky. When everyone gelled and he was dialed in, he looked unstoppable out there. He was the calmest goaltender I've ever seen calmest goaltender I've seen in a long time wearing that Griffins uniform. And just some of the saves he made were just game breakers. Like that's where the other team is defeated at that point. They don't know what they can do to get past them. I mean, I think back to the one game during the snowstorm where Rockford did end up beating us, but he stopped 40 something shots, like 20 something in the first period. He did everything he could every single game that he was in net to give the boys a chance to win. And some nights it worked for us, some nights it didn't, but God, did he just had an incredible season. And we know he's going to be here next season. We know he's going to be the number one guy next season. I'm just so excited to continue to watch his development. So yeah, Sebastian Cossa was my pick. Nick, who did you have?
So I'm going to go. So I wrote two people down. All right. The first one started pretty slow for Grand Rapids. Not a fan favorite. You yelled his name quite a bit, Brandon, in the beginning of the season. And second half of the season, he really turned it on. I mean, majority of the games that he called for, game misconducts for the Griffins, I mean, we ended up scoring more on those. So my MVP was Grady Hamilton.
Oh my God. Did you just drop a referee as an MVP?
It's wonderful.
As many episodes we talked about this gentleman, he did deserve. No, I'm kidding. No, I made up all those stats. My MVP was literally Sebastian Cossa. I mean, I think the 19-point streak, right? Like, yeah, our penalty kill was better. He's our best penalty killer. There's a lot of that goes into Cossa, and I think I love the way that they split the games this year. And we had to have a veteran. We thought it was going to be Lyon, and we got Hutch, which is fine. Hutch is super nice. I've talked to him outside of the during the season ticket events. No love lost for Hutch. But Coast, like the development, he did start slow as well, in the season, and it ramped up. I mean, I am so excited for next season. I do watch the goalies a lot more than I'll see like forwards or defensemen. I usually key on D a little bit more besides the goalie. And so I'm really excited to see how he develops and how he does this offseason, and then going into training camp and how he does for the beginning of the season, because each season, the last two seasons, he's been in a different league, or 3 seasons he's been in a different league. So now he's adjusted, now that he's comfortable, he knows the routine, he knows his coach. Not that he didn't know his coach last year, but like he's got that familiarity, like he's able to play, he's able to just settle down to the role, and I'm expecting lights out. Like this is a good starting point for him. And like I said, his stats matched up really well against Ned's for last season. And Ned had a terrible team in front of him. So I'm excited to see where this guy goes moving forward. So I would expect he'd probably take 70-30 of the share. But who knows who we start, who we have next year. And I'm okay if they go 50-50 again, to be honest. So keep him fresh, keep him ready.
Yeah, I like it. Honorable mention MVP to his first year as a coach, Brian Lashoff, as well.
I thought to say Dan Watson. I'm like, oh no, Lash.
It's not his first year as a coach, because Dan's had a few years under his belt there as a pro coach.
Griffins coach is what you meant.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I think look at the defensive side. We talked a lot in this recap of the season about defense and penalty kill and just all defensively overall as a team. And I don't think we are talking the same conversation without a guy like that behind the bench. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that as well, because he deserves all the kudos in the world. Dan does too as well, but Dan gets a lot of kudos being the head coach guy. Someone's got to mention the assistant coach, and Brian had a hell of a season as a first-year coach, and I can't wait to see what he can do another year with this team. Just so glad he's with the organization still.
Agreed.
So that does wrap up our season recap of the Grand Rapids Griffins season. Like we said, we will do a more specific breakdown of the offense, defense, and goalies and penalty kill and stuff in later episodes of the season, but we wanted to just give an overall recap. But before we end the episode, quick update on the AHL playoffs, because I know people want to know if they're not watching closely, because I said I wasn't going to watch, but the games have honestly been really thrilling to watch. These matchups have been fun, but as expected, Coachella is up 2-0 on Milwaukee as the series shifts back to Milwaukee. Game 3 is tomorrow. That'd be Tuesday. So that should be an interesting one to see what that looks like going back. That is getting extremely chippy. There's been some good jabs between the two teams, especially in the post-game press conferences, as somebody from Milwaukee mentioned that Coachella was born into the league with a silver spoon in their mouth, and then Andrew Podorowski brings a silver spoon to the next press conference he does. So I love those little things. Those make it way more fun.
Drama in the playoff. Yeah. Who would have thought?
You know what? You don't see it much from this league. So like seeing it, it's actually pretty fun. And seeing people notice it is even more fun. And on the Eastern Conference side of things, who would have expected this? The Hershey Bears are up 2-0 against Cleveland.
However, Denton Matejchuk, Moose Jaw Warrior, Columbus Blue Jackets prospect, signed, has been assigned down to Cleveland. He is expected to join the Monsters tomorrow night. So he could be a game changer, guys. So just watch out.
Will it make a difference?
Yeah, we know how it goes to bring junior prospects into the AHL in the playoffs. It usually goes pretty well.
Especially the guy like him. He scored 7 points in 4 games in Saginaw over the last week, and on a team that didn't even make it to the championship game. Pretty good player. Yeah.
No, I mean, to Cleveland's credit, both these games have gone to overtime. So, again, when I say these games have been thrilling to watch, the Coachella ones maybe not so much because Coachella has been playing a lot better than Milwaukee. Zach LaRue is doing Zach LaRue things and putting Milwaukee in bad positions. He did it in game 1, took a 10-minute misconduct. Again, what a shocker. But these Hershey-Cleveland games have been barn burners. Hershey won the first one 5-4. The next one was a little closer at 3-2, but this has been fun hockey to watch. We all assume we're going to see a rematch in the finals of last year's final, which if we do, it's going to be incredible hockey to watch. So if you bought the AHL subscription to watch the Griffins, you still have it. It was for the whole playoffs. You could be watching these games. So make sure you tune in and enjoy some incredible hockey. But with that, boys, anything else you guys want to add to this episode before we round this out?
Tyler? Nick, let's let Nick go first. Nick, you go first this time.
I mean, is it pretty common for this to happen as rematches in the finals?
Not in the AHL, I don't think.
Not
Tyler
really.
To correct me.
No, I don't think, because Hershey won back-to-back years. I don't think they played Texas back-to-back years. I mean, it's rarity in general. That's why the Penguins and Wings going back-to-back in 08 and 09 is such a big deal, because that hadn't happened since, I'm making sure I got this right, since the Oilers and Islanders played in 83 and 84.
I think you're correct.
Yeah, which is funny because Doc Emmerich in the beginning of the 08 series said there's not been this kind of firepower on both sides since the Islanders and Oilers in the 80s. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny because, yeah, they did the same thing. But I just want to take the time here because I've unfortunately been so busy with other things. I've not been able to go on social media and make this big post yet. I got to thank everyone from the Griffins organization this year, being super helpful, from Randy Claves, managing PR director, to Andrew Streidel of public relations as well, to all the great interns they had working, obviously to Bob Kaiser, the team for letting me into the locker room and letting me ask questions on, on nights when I was just the only guy in there. I was the only guy with my phone saying, all right, coach, the team won tonight. How do you think you did? They were all super helpful. So I just had to say thanks to them for another year, because it's it's a privilege to be able to cover a professional sports team. And it's great when it's the team that you grew up cheering for and you've been around them for so long. And the amount of help that they did, especially during the playoffs. And, I mentioned the locker clean out conversations I had with guys. Those were over the phone because I had to stay home with my kid, and it was on a random day on a Tuesday. So no real babysitters available. And they took the time to set up phone calls with the guys. And so I really appreciate that. And obviously when they were on the road during the playoffs, did that as well. So just big thanks to Randy, Andrew, Dylan Ryder, he writes for the Fair State Torch. He's one of their interns. Him and I got along pretty well this year. Obviously Bob Kaiser and Eric Young, the video coach. Obviously Lashoff, always got to say hi to him in the hall. And obviously Dan and I have had conversations off the mic as well. Him and I, he's a really good guy. I'm glad he's sticking around for a little bit. Everyone was it just felt like it was just a fun year to cover this team, not just because of the wins, but everyone was just it felt like very, I don't want to say the word inclusive because unfortunately that just gets taken so many different ways, but they were just super welcoming. There's another word I can use. Welcoming to myself, to all members of the media. And it was a fun year. And I'm grateful to everyone that helped me out, helped people like Elaine Shercliffe out. And and so many other people that helped. Andrew Rinaldi, I was trying to think of the name off the top of my head. It, helped us all out, helped us get the best coverage possible for the Griffins this year. And we're all very grateful for that. So I just had to say thank you to them. I'm not sure if they listen or watch this, but I'm sure they get the message for sure.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff, man. And as always, when we have a guest in the show, Tyler, where can the people find your work?
At TJ. Where? Not on Twitter. Well, at TJKU29 is where you can follow me because that's where I get my stuff. Dailyfaceoff.com /author/Tyler Kuehl. I think that's the web address. And then you go to College Hockey News. I'm on there somewhere. I haven't done a lot for them lately because since the season's been over. And for MLive, which now that the season's over, I guess I still kind of cover the Whitecaps a little bit, and obviously I got Berlin Raceway, but I'm on there too. So yeah, you can find me over there in one of the jobs I have for now.
It's good stuff. Nick, do you want to add anything else to this episode, man?
No, I'm excited for the off season. We could relax a little bit, but we're going to still be putting out content at least once, twice, 3 times a week, 5 days.
We have a ton
3
of
times
stuff.
a lady.
Dude, we have so much stuff planned for the season. Like we've teased it before, but if you like interviews, you like off-season content, we're gonna have a ton of stuff and a lot of stuff that you won't expect us to have. So It's gonna be a really fun off-season for the both of us.
I'm super excited. I mean, this was our first full year going through the full season, so it was a good push. It was a good first full year. So our rookie year, right?
Technically, you didn't play enough games. Yeah, didn't have enough episodes.
Yeah. So, we started halfway through, kind of like Simon did this year with the Wings or Bergie, whatever. But I mean, I can't. You guys did your thank yous last episode on the Walleye one, and it's crazy to go into Toledo and everybody say hi or go up and shake your hand. Like that was a crazy experience, and you still had that experience at the player event for the Toledo, the fan send off event. So. I'm excited for next season. I'm excited for the off season. We're going to bring some content to continue on. And it's crazy how fast this thing's grown and how fast it's still growing. So, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in every week or every episode. And we're even going to do some fan side of things too, I think, from what we talked about the other night. So,
yep. We got, like I said, a ton of fun stuff planned. A ton of fun stuff. There'll be a storm coming for sure. It'll be a good time. So with that, like everyone else said, I always say it. Thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate you all. Thank you for everyone that's helped us out. Thank you, Tyler, for coming on the show. Thank you to all our close friends with the Griffins. Andrew, Elaine, other Andrew as well with the team, Andrew Streidel. Appreciate him. He's helped us out this season as well. We never thought, even the first year into this, we'd interview a player, and Amadeus Lombardi was our first one. And Andrew gets a ton of credit for helping us get that done. So thank you to all of them. And as always, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Everything Hockey. Make sure to head over to everythinghockey.com. Use code WEST. Save us $3 off your order. Thank you to our other sponsor, DraftKings, as well. Make sure you're using THPN as the code when you're betting with them for the first time. And thank you to the Hockey Podcast Network for being fantastic partners with us. It's good to be back to business as usual. But with that, everybody, have a fantastic week. We will talk to you all in our Toledo episode this week. It'll either come out Friday or Saturday. So everyone have a fantastic week. Go Griffins. Go Walleye. We'll talk to you soon.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hockeytown West Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at HockeytownWPod and your host, Nick at GR Hockey Guy and Brandon at Brandon GR Hockey.